Hi students, welcome to PhD Jobs and Admission. This is Gauri. So in this video, I am going to teach you about research methodology syllabus of PhD entrance test at Dr. B.R.Ambedkar Open University. Okay, so in this video, I am going to teach you about top 50 plus MCQs on research methodology so that all of your doubts relevant to research methodology will get clear. But still, if you have any doubts, you can ask me in the comment box after viewing this video. Okay. So before starting this session, I want to tell you that Global Online team provides you complete course on research methodology. As in BRAOU PhD entrance test, you will be asked 50% MCQs on research methodology. So if you want to qualify PhD entrance test, then you need to score more marks in research methodology. So with the help of this course, you can score more marks in research methodology and qualify PhD entrance test. So students, in this course we are providing you full syllabus video lectures under which theory and MCQ lectures both are available. You will get full syllabus notes and mock tests. You will get more than 1500 MCQs revision PDF, and all of these study materials are available in both the languages, Hindi and English. So basically students, we have 10 mock tests like this, and each mock test contains 40 MCQs, and that's why overall you can solve 400 MCQs in mock test only. And by the use of this revision PDF, you can revise all the topics in a single PDF, and you will be getting 80% MCQs from this revision PDF only out of 100% MCQs in research methodology section of BRAOU PhD entrance test. And over here, the topics that I have mentioned, like research aptitude, communication, data interpretation, information and communication technology, all of these topics are covered, okay, in this complete course, and these topics are there in the syllabus of your research methodology section of PhD entrance test. Okay, so students, if you want to buy this course, then you can either download the Global Online app from the Play Store. For that, I have given the link in the description box of this video, or else you can contact me through these WhatsApp numbers. Okay, and the course fees are really very less, which are only 699 rupees. And in such a low course fees, we are providing you step by step guidance at your each and every step of PhD admission at BRAOU. And as well, Global Online team provides you 100% passing guarantee, that you can guaranteed qualify the PhD entrance test. Okay, start with our today's session. Now the question 1 is ethnography does not include. So from these options, which is the option which is not included in the ethnography? So basically students, ethnography is the qualitative research, because within the ethnography method, we basically study the culture of a specific community or society. As well, we study over here about the behaviors of the participants, how they behave, what are their characteristics within the community, what are the cultures of the community or society. Okay, and that's why in the ethnography we use some methods for the data collection. For example, we use field notes to collect the data regarding a specific a field or specific culture or society. Okay, then second one is that we also use participant observation method. Participant observation is the most used method in ethnography, and in this method basically researcher itself participates in a particular community or society, and researcher lives with the participants, and they do he or she basically do all the activities with the participants, and he or she can study the specific culture of that particular community. Okay, and the third is that value neutrality. As well, we use the value neutrality kind of data collection in the ethnography. Okay, and that's why the correct answer to this question is second, that is objective analysis, because there is nothing like we do regarding objective analysis in ethnography. Basically here we do the subjective analysis, because over here we are going to study the behavior, a quality or characteristic or nature of a humans. Okay, basically, and that's why here there is only subjective analysis, not an objective analysis, and that's why the correct answer over here is 2. Okay, next is which one of the following is the main feature of qualitative research? Okay, So whether it is avoids positivist assumptions and data analysis, or subscribes to pre-existing categories, or collects data in numerical form, or uses the empirical method of data analysis. Okay, so basically students, first of all we need to understand what is exactly positivist approach. What is that? So basically students, step by step I will tell you what is that. So basically a positivistic approach emphasizes quantitative analysis. Okay, basically it emphasizes the quantitative analysis, okay, over the qualitative analysis. Second one is that positivistic approach subscribes to pre-existing categories. Okay, subscribes to pre-existing categories. It means that basically you have already a hypothesis, and based on that hypothesis you are going to test that hypothesis, and the meaning of this is that subscribes to pre-existing categories. Now the third characteristic of positivist approach is that it is based upon the empirical evidence, and that's why empirical evidence is gathered and analyzed over here. Okay, empirical evidence. Empirical evidence means the evidence which is based upon observations and measurements of the data. And the fourth one is it collects numerical data. It collects numerical data. So after viewing such characteristics, now you can understand that all of these characteristics are of the quantitative research, not qualitative research. Now what are the characteristics of qualitative research? Okay, so basically qualitative research believes in interpretivism paradigm. Okay, it believes in interpretivism paradigm. Okay, and it disregards positivist assumption and statistical data analysis. Basically interpretivism paradigm is based upon our intuitions or our thinking power. Okay, not the empirical evidence. Okay, and that's why the main feature of qualitative research should be that it should avoid positivist assumptions and data analysis, and it should based upon interpretivism. Okay, and that's why the correct answer over here is 1, because avoiding positivist assumptions and data analysis is one of the main feature of qualitative research. And if you observe below 3 options, then you will understand that all of these 3 options are comes under the characteristic of positivist assumptions only. Okay, and that's why the correct answer over here is 1. Okay, which of the following are the features of case study method? So whether it is appreciative or particularistic or descriptive or inductive or mechanical. So case study method is again the qualitative method in which we are going to study, or basically you can say we are going to study in detail about a specific person for a longer period of time. Okay, and that's why case study focuses on a specific case or situation, and that's why it is called as a particularistic approach. Okay, particularistic approach. The second characteristic of case study is that it is descriptive, because here we are going to study in detail about a specific person, and that's why we get the descriptive idea or descriptive characteristics or data of that particular person. The third one is that it is inductive. Inductive means that here we observe the person, we get the opinions from the person, and after that, based upon the observations and opinions, we are going to make up a theory, and this is called as the inductive approach. Again, case study method is flexible. It means that we can use various data collection methods over here. There is nothing like we will be having a fixed research design. We can use different research designs based upon the situation. Next is that it should have multiple sources of evidence. Okay, it has multiple sources of evidence. And the sixth one is that it is interpretive. Interpretive means we should interpret our results, or we should interpret the observations that we are getting, okay, at the final stage. And that's why from these characteristics now you will understand that the correct answer to this question is second, that is BCD only, because case study method is particularistic, because it is based upon a specific topic only, and it is actually based upon a single special person and its characteristic. Then it is descriptive because we are going to study in detail, and as well it is inductive because here we are going to make up a theory. And that's why the correct answer over here is second, that is BCD only. In which of the following there is greater flexibility in both the methods and process of research? Okay, so whether it is ethnography and phenomenology, whether it is a descriptive survey and impact studies, experimental and observation based studies, ex post facto and historical studies. So students, in today's session we are going to talk about qualitative and quantitative research methods. And qualitative research methods basically based upon the quality or behavior of the specific person, and that's why here we are going to deeply understand the behavior of the persons in a different situations. And that's why within the qualitative research method we use different kinds of data collection methods, and we don't have a fixed research design over here. According to the situation we will design the whole research process, and we are going to do the different data collection methods and data analysis methods. And that's why qualitative research is basically not flexible. Okay, sorry, it is basically flexible. Okay, it is flexible because here we can use any kind of data collection method, any kind of data analysis method. But in the quantitative research exactly opposite happens, because here we already have the hypothesis, or basically here in some cases we are going to formulate the hypothesis and we are going to test that hypothesis by using statistical techniques. And that's why here we have a fixed kind of research design, we don't have a flexibility. And according to different types of research methods, from these research options only ethnography and phenomenology are the types of qualitative research methods, because within the ethnography we are going to study the culture, and within the phenomenology we are going to study the behavior of a person in a different environments, okay, whatever environment they are going to experience. And that's why both of these are the qualitative research methods, and that's why these have a more flexibility in terms of both the methods and process of research. And that's why the correct answer over here is 1. And from these options 2, 3, 4, all of these basically are the types of quantitative research. Okay, quantitative research, because descriptive survey, impact studies, experimental and observation based studies, ex post facto and historical studies, all of these are the types of quantitative research methods, because over here we collect the numerical data and we need to basically test the hypothesis by using the statistical techniques. Okay, and that's why there is no any kind of flexibility while doing the research. Okay, next is which of the following methods is used in empirical researches? Okay, so within empirical researches, which from these methods the method is used? So basically empirical researches means the research approach in which we are going to be having a proper observation and as well a proper measurement of the collected data. And based upon the proper observation and measurement we will be having a strong evidence, and based on this evidence we will be having the results. So this is nothing but the empirical research. Okay, so whether we use inductive method over here, or we are going to use deductive method, or initiative method, or scientific method. So obviously students, the correct answer to this question is 4, that is scientific method, because a scientific method is the method which we follow everywhere whenever we want to do the research, because within the scientific method there are lots of systematic steps, one by one steps, and we follow those steps whenever we do the research, and these steps basically based upon the empirical approaches, and that's why within the empirical researches scientific method is used. And what are inductive and deductive methods? So basically within the inductive method we have the observations, and based upon the observations we will be going to formulate a theory. Okay. And what is the deductive method? So within the deductive method we are going to formulate a hypothesis, we are going to test the hypothesis by using the statistical techniques. Okay. And finally you will get the results and conclusion. So basically whenever you combine the inductive method and deductive method, then it will form the scientific method. Okay. And that's why the correct answer over here is 4. Okay. Next is the quantitative research is based on. So from these options, which is the option on which quantitative research is based? So whether it is reductionism, whether it is grounded theory, or field notes, or expansionism. So basically students, what is reductionism? We will see that first of all. So basically reductionism is philosophical approach that seeks to explain complex phenomena by reducing them to their smaller, more fundamental parts. It involves breaking down complex system or concept into its constituent elements or components with belief that understanding these smaller parts will allow for greater understanding of whole. Okay, so reductionism means that we are going to break down the complex parts into simple parts so that we can easily study them. So in the quantitative research basically we do the same. So in the quantitative research basically whatever problem we have, we are going to convert that problem into the hypothesis, and hypothesis is a straightforward statement, and we are going to test this hypothesis by using the statistical techniques, and after all we will get the results. And that's why here we are going to convert the complex problem into a simple hypothesis. Here basically we are going to do a reductionism, and that's why the correct answer to this question is 1, that is reductionism. And that's why quantitative research is based upon reductionism. Grounded theory is one of the research type of qualitative research, okay, within which we are going to formulate a theory. Field notes is the data collection method which we can use while doing the ethnography. And expansionism means that we are going to convert the simpler things into the complex things, which is exactly the opposite thing, okay, of the thing that quantitative research basically does. And that's why the correct answer over here is 1. Next is, which of the following represent the quantitative research methodology? Whether it is one-to-one interview, or survey research, or focus groups, or correlation research, or descriptive research. Now students, all of you now understood exactly what are the quantitative research methods and what are the qualitative research methods. So from these options, obviously survey research, correlation research, and descriptive research are the quantitative research methodologies, because in these research processes we are going to collect the numerical data, and based upon the numerical data we are going to formulate the hypothesis, and after all we are going to test the hypothesis by using the statistical techniques, and finally we will get the results. But in the one-to-one interview, focus groups, okay, basically we are not going to do such kinds of things, and these are basically the qualitative research methodologies, not quantitative one. And that's why the correct answer to this question is 2nd, that is BDE only. Okay, now next is, which of the below mentioned approaches fall under the quantitative approach? So what is quantitative approach? Approach means what are your perspectives while doing any kind of the thing, or what are the methods that you are going to follow. So whether it is simulation approach or projective technique or inferential approach or depth interview or experimental approach. So again the similar question have been asked over here like question 7, but only the difference is that over here there is approach and in the last question there was a methodology, but the meaning of both the words are same. Okay, so let us see what is simulation approach first of all. So basically it is a technique that reproduces actual events and processes under test condition, and after all we are going to test such events and processes by using the statistical techniques. And again in this basic approach or simulation approach we are going to use the statistical techniques, and that's why here we are going to use the quantitative approach only. Okay, then next is what? Projective technique. So within the projective technique a person analyzes his or her behavior or opinions on certain situations, and that's why here we are going to study the characteristics of the human being, how they behave, like that. And that's why here there is a qualitative approach, not quantitative. What is now inferential approach? It means survey research where sample of the population is studied to determine its characteristics, and basis of hypothesis testing with statistical analysis is inference. Inferential approach means we are going to take out the inferences from our hypothesis testing part to the whole population. And again here there is hypothesis, there is testing of hypothesis, and that's why there is quantitative approach. Then depth interview means we are going to do a depth interview with the respondents. So face-to-face interview, and again here we are going to understand the opinions of the participants, and there is no any kind of statistical analysis or any kind of hypothesis testing part, and that's why here there is qualitative approach. And within the experimental approach we are going to do the experiments in a controlled environment where we are going to manipulate the independent variable and see the effects on the dependent variable. And again there are lots of statistical techniques, lots of hypothesis formulation procedures, hypothesis testing procedures, and again there is quantitative approach. Okay, and that's why the correct answer to this question is 1, that is ACE only, because I have told you that simulation approach is quantitative, inferential approach is again quantitative, and experimental approach is again quantitative. And in this question exactly the quantitative approach has been asked to you, not qualitative. And projective techniques and depth interviews, both of these are the qualitative approaches, and that's why the correct answer over here is 1. Okay, which of the following sequences correctly represents the steps of research using a quantitative paradigm? Quantitative paradigm means exactly from which perspective or from which approach you are doing the research by using quantitative methodology. Okay, so in every research there are lots of sequence of steps that we need to follow, and these are nothing but the scientific methods. And within the quantitative paradigm we need to follow such steps, and here these steps have been given, but we have to understand the sequence of correct steps that we need to follow. So whether it is hypothesis framing first, or hypothesis testing, or conclusions and reporting, or establishing a research question, or hypothesis framing or hypothesis testing, then generalization and conclusions and implications of result, problem identification, sample selection, developing a research design and fieldwork, defining a problem, survey of related studies, then sampling, data collection and data analysis. So here you have been asked for a quantitative paradigm, and that's why there is the collection of numerical data first of all, then there is a hypothesis, then again there is a testing of hypothesis, there is statistical analysis. So that's why we need to follow such procedures in the quantitative paradigm, and that's why your correct answer should be 2nd, because here the first step is establishing a research problem. And this thing I have told you earlier that in any kind of a research process, the first step is to identify and establish a research problem. Then your second step should be hypothesis framing, that is formulation of a hypothesis. Then your third step should be hypothesis testing. Then after the testing part, you are going to generalize your results to the target population. Then you will get conclusions, and after all you are going to implicate your results. Okay, and that's why the correct answer should be 2 over here. Next is, through which of the following methods of research cause and effect relationship is focused. So in these research methods, which is the research method in which cause and effect relationship is studied and focused? So whether it is historical method, whether it is experimental method, ex post facto method, or case study method. So now students, all of you understood that in the historical method, basically we are going to study the past events and we are going to predict our future and present based upon the past events. And here there is no any kind of a cause and effect relationship that we are going to study. Okay, that's why this option is eliminated. In the experimental method, we are going to do the study in a controlled environment. We are going to assess the relationship between the variables, that is independent and dependent, and for that we are going to manipulate the independent variable and we are going to see their effects on the dependent variable. And that's why in the experimental method only you are going to focus upon the cause and effect relationship between the variables, because here you are going to test their relationship, whether there is relationship any over there or not. And that's why the correct answer to this question is second, that is experimental method. Within the ex post facto method, we are going to study the causes of the event which is already happened in the recent past. Again here you are going to see the relationship between cause and effect variables, but here you can't manipulate the variables. The variables are not in your control because the incidence is occurred in the recent past. Okay, and that's why here your focus is not upon cause and effect relationship only, but on the other things as well. Then within the case study method, you are going to study detailed about a particular person regarding its specific characteristic for a longer period of time. And that's why here there is no any kind of a relationship is focused as in question is identify the sequence of following steps in mail surveys. So basically you have given here 5 steps of mail surveys, and we are going to be follow them or write these steps in a sequentially manner. Okay, so what are basically the mail surveys? So in mail surveys, survey is administered through mail. So basically we are going to ask the questions to our respondents through the mail. Okay, and that's why there are a lot of procedures in that. The first step over here is select a sample. So you are going to select a sample. Then after that your second step should be constructing a questionnaire. Okay, so you are going to construct a questionnaire. Okay, then after that your third step should be preparing a cover letter. Now the cover letter is required to encourage the respondents or participants and to introduce the survey, and as well it should explain the purpose of survey, and it should provide instructions for completing it and focus on importance of respondents participation. Okay, then after that your fourth step should be mail the questionnaire. Okay, mail the questionnaire to the participants, and your last step should be monitor the written rate of the mail. So it means that you are going to follow up your response rate from the participants and the non-participants, okay, as well. So basically you are going to provide more consent, or you are going to provide more information to the non-participants so that they will participate in the survey and they will provide you the responses. So that students, the correct answer for this question should be 4, E, A, C, B, D, because here your E should be, that is select a sample, should be first step. A A should be second step, that is constructing a questionnaire. Third, prepare a cover letter should be your third step. B, mail the questionnaire should be your fourth step, and monitor the written rate of mail should be your fifth step. Okay. Now next is, which of the following is a longitudinal design? Okay. So basically students, here we have given different types of designs, and from which we are going to identify from this which are the longitudinal designs. So whether it is panel study, whether it is cross-sectional or trained, or both, 1 and 3 are longitudinal designs. So basically students, longitudinal design is the type of descriptive method. Okay. And descriptive method means we are going to provide the characteristics of a situation, event, or person or group of people. Okay. So within the longitudinal design, we are going to study single individual for a longer period of time. Okay. And that's why longitudinal design has again 3 types of designs, and the first one is panel study. Okay, panel study. So panel study is the type of longitudinal design in which unit of analysis is observed at specific intervals over a long period of time. Now second study is cohort. Okay. So within cohort study, we collect information from group of people who share specific characteristics. Okay. And now the third study design is trained study design. Okay. So in which we focus on same population of people using opinion poll surveys to look at their attitudes over time. So basically we provide the polls. Okay. And from the polls we get the opinions from the participants at a specific amount of time or over a period of time from the same population. Okay, that is nothing but the trained study, and that's why your correct answer should be 4, because here panel study and trained study both are the types of longitudinal designs, and cross-sectional study is again the another type of descriptive study design. So cross-sectional study is exactly opposite to longitudinal design. So within the cross-sectional design, we study different population or different variety of population at a specific unit amount of time, not a longer period of time. Okay, and that's why the correct answer over here is 4. Okay. Now next is, in descriptive research, the primary data can be obtained through. So in the descriptive research type, from which methods we can obtain the primary data? So basically students, primary data is the kind of data which is grabbed by first user only. Okay. And this is the data which is there at the first time, and it is called as the primary data. Okay. So we have the different options: observation, direct communication with respondents in one form or another, personal interview, all of the above. So basically students, there are lots of data collection methods in the descriptive research through which we can collect the primary data. So the first data collection method is observation. So basically students, we use observation as a data collection method so that we can obtain the quantitative data. Okay. Now the second one is survey. Survey is another data collection method in which we can ask the questions to our participants and participants respond to us. The third one is case study. So within case study design or data collection method, we detailed get information or we get in-depth information from the participants. Okay. Now the fourth data collection method is personal interview. Personal interview is nothing but the face-to-face interview method in which we ask the same questions or to the range of participants and we get the answers from those participants. Okay. Now fifth one is direct communication. Okay. Direct communication. So basically students, direct communication is a speech that conveys clear messages or that clearly directs actions. Okay. So students, from these 5 data collection methods, now we can understand the correct answer to this question should be 4, that is all of the above, because here observation is the data collection method, direct communication is another data collection method, and personal interview is third data collection method, and all of these we can use to collect the primary data in the descriptive research. Okay. Now next is, what type of statistical data are used in educational research? So within the educational research, what type of statistical data we can use? So basically, can we use descriptive statistical analysis? Can we use inferential statistical analysis? Can we use both of them or none of these? So students, educational research is the type of research in which we need both kind of data, which is qualitative and quantitative. Okay, and that's why when we want to collect the quantitative data, and after that when we want to analyze the quantitative data, then obviously for the analysis thing we are going to test it through statistical analysis techniques. And there are 2 types of statistical analysis techniques, and from that one is descriptive statistical analysis and the second one is inferential statistical analysis. Okay, so descriptive statistical analysis is computed to describe characteristics of sample or population in totality. Okay, so basically here we are going to describe characteristics of a sample through the computation. Okay, characteristics of samples. So descriptive statistical analysis includes mean, mode, median, standard deviation, then correlation. Okay, and as well there are another type of dispersion techniques, for example variance. Okay, so all of these are the descriptive statistical analysis. Okay, now inferential statistics, what is that? So basically it is used to draw conclusions or generalizations beyond the sample with known degree of accuracy. So basically descriptive statistical analysis has limitations up to the samples only, but if I want to make the generalizations beyond the samples, then I will use inferential statistical analysis. So basically you can say a parametric test is the inferential statistical analysis, then non-parametric tests are inferential statistical analysis, and we are going to see these parametric and non-parametric tests in the upcoming videos. As well we are going to see mean, mode, median, standard deviation, correlation, variance in upcoming videos, so don't worry. And that's why the correct answer over here is 3, that is both of them, because here we can use descriptive statistical analysis and inferential statistical analysis both, okay, in educational research. Okay, now next, what does descriptive research include according to Van Dalen? So according to Van Dalen, there are 3 types of studies which are included in descriptive research, and those are, first one is survey studies. So within the survey studies we are going to ask the questions to the participants and participants respond to us. So in the survey studies we are going to deliver open-ended questions in which we get the descriptive answers, and as well we include the closed-ended questions from which we get the closed answers. Basically we provide the choices to the open closed-ended questions and we get the answers from those choices. Okay, now next one is interrelationship studies. So into these studies basically we rely on both the things, and those are facts and theory. So these theory and facts both are interdependent with each other. So if I want to study on facts, then I will think about theory, or I will study the facts based upon the theory. And if I want to explain the theory, if I want to prove the theory, then I will take help from the facts. Okay, and this is nothing but interrelationship studies. And the third study is developmental studies. So within the developmental studies, as the name suggests, developmental. So we are going to study the development of each and every object. For example, if I want to study the development of an organism in a human being, for example, I want to study the development of a particular organism such as heart, then from a single cell I will see its development, okay, towards a proper heart. So this is nothing but growth of a single cell towards the heart, and this is nothing but development of each and every stage, okay, and this is nothing but developmental study. So these are the studies which are included in the descriptive research, because these are the studies in which we are going to describe the characteristics of the things, okay, and that's why the correct answer over here is all of these, okay. Now next is, what new product should be developed is an example of which type of research, okay, dash. Whether it is causal, whether it is descriptive, whether it is exploratory, whether it is none of the above. So students, if I want to understand, or if I want to get the answer for the question what new product should be developed, then in that situation which kind of research type I need to follow. So causal research type is the research type in which I am going to identify, or I am going to establish the causal relationship between the two variables, such as independent variable and dependent variable, or you can say cause and effect variable, okay. Within the descriptive research study, I am going to describe the characteristics whatever there are, and in the exploratory research type I am going to explore the things. It means that I have basic idea about the research, or you can say I don't have that much information about the research study, and that's why I'm going to explore the things. So basically exploratory research type is incorporated so that I will get the answers to the questions why, how and what. So if I want the answer for this question, what new product should be developed, then for this kind of question I will follow exploratory research, because here I will be getting the answer for what, okay, what, and that's why the correct answer over here is third, that is exploratory research type, okay. Next is, which of the following would be true regarding exploratory research. So regarding exploratory research, we have given 4 statements, and from these statements we are going to identify true statement relevant to exploratory research. So first is, exploratory research is highly structured, exploratory research is very formal, exploratory research determines causality, exploratory research is both unstructured and informal. As I have told in the previous question that exploratory research is incorporated so that we get the answers to the questions why, how and what. So basically whenever I have a very basic information about the overall research topic, then I will follow the exploratory research so that I will get information about further research, and I will understand how I am going to deal with further research, okay, and that's why within the exploratory research I am going to develop the hypothesis. I'm going to develop the hypothesis, and that's why there is no any kind of a rule while doing the exploratory research. As well, I can use unstructured format over here. I can use informal techniques, such as I can use informal data collection methods. As well, exploratory research does not determine causality, because here we are going to develop the hypothesis only, and that's why we can't determine causality between the variables in such kind of research, and that's why the correct answer to this question is 4, because exploratory research is both unstructured because it is not structured, and as well it is informal because here we can use informal data collection methods over here as well, such as we can personally talk with the participants, okay, or such as we can personally go to the areas where I need to find out the data, and that's why informal ways can be followed over here, okay, and that's why the correct answer over here is 4. So you can understand here that the characteristics of exploratory research are, they are unstructured, they are informal, okay, and that's why the correct answer is 4. In which research type the research design is flexible? Okay, so here again we have given 4 types of research, and in which research the research design is flexible. So whether it is descriptive research, whether it is explanatory research, whether it is exploratory research, pure research. So flexible means there are no any rules. Okay, we can follow any kind of a step, we can follow any kind of informal ways while doing the research. This is called as flexible. So within the descriptive research, whatever incidents, whatever situation or whatever person over there, we are going to describe the characteristics of that thing as there it is. And that's why this is fixed research design. We are going to follow the fixed research design over here. There is no any flexibility. So this option gets eliminated. In the explanatory research design, we are going to explain the relationship between the variables, and that's why whatever relationship over there between the variables, we are going to explain it is as it is, and that's why this is as well the fixed research design. We are going to follow the fixed research design over here, and that's why this is also get eliminated. Within the exploratory research design, as I have told you earlier in this video, this is unstructured, and as well there is no any rule to deal with it, and that's why this is flexible research design. Okay, that's why the correct answer to this question is third. And pure research or fundamental research is the research in which we are going to expand our knowledge, we are going to formulate a principle or theory or law, and that's why this is as well the fixed research design. So this option gets eliminated, and that's why the correct answer is 3, that is exploratory research. Which among the following are possible goals of an exploratory study? So here we have given 4 options A, B, C, D, and in that we have given statements about possible goals of an exploratory study, and we are going to identify those possible goals. So first is discover future research topics, then expand understanding of a topic, test hypothesis, develop hypothesis. So students, until now you have understood that what is exactly exploratory study, and that's where the possible goals of an exploratory study are. First one is we are going to discover the future research topics. Okay, future research topics, because here we don't have that much information about the future research topic, and that's why within the exploratory study we are going to collect the preliminary data so that we can discover future research feasibility, future research topics. Okay, now next one is expand understanding of a topic. Yes, we can as well expand the understanding of a topic in the exploratory research study, because we don't have that much information about the topic, and that's why we can expand the understanding of a topic by collecting data, and so that we can do the next research procedures based upon exploratory study. And the third goal is that to develop a hypothesis, that I have told you earlier in this video, that we are going to develop the hypothesis in the exploratory study. Okay, so we don't test hypothesis over here. There is no need to test the hypothesis, because there is no any kind of a conclusion over here. We are going to only develop the hypothesis in the exploratory study. We don't test it. Okay, and that's why the correct answer to this question is second, that is A, B, D are correct, because only these are the possible goals of an exploratory study. Okay, next is in which type of research hypothesis is vague. Vague means not clear or not defined. Okay, so in which research type hypothesis is not defined. So whether it is causal, whether it is descriptive, whether it is exploratory, or none of the above. Now students, all of you understood that only exploratory research design is the type of research design in which research hypothesis is not clear or it is not defined, because in the exploratory research design our final step is to develop the hypothesis. Okay, because priorly we are not able to understand what is the research is about, and that's why here we are going to collect the preliminary data, and finally we are going to develop the hypothesis, and that's why the hypothesis is not vague. hypothesis is vague over here, that is it is not defined. Okay, and in the causal and descriptive research types, hypothesis is clearly defined, and so that we are going to test the hypothesis over here. But in the exploratory research design, we don't test the hypothesis, we only develop it. Okay, because it is not clear, and that's why the correct answer over here is 3. Of the conceptual framework in which the research is carried out. Okay, so what is the name of that conceptual framework? Through that conceptual framework, basically the research is carried out. So whether it is research hypothesis, or it is a synopsis of research, or it is research paradigm, or it is research design. So basically conceptual framework means the whole outline of the whole research process, which is nothing but the research design, and that's why your correct answer should be 4, because research design is the whole outline of your whole research process, in which you basically explain what are different research data collection methods and data analysis methods you are going to employ in your whole research process. Okay, and that's why your correct answer should be 4. Now the research hypothesis means the prediction of the solution of your research. Synopsis of research means the summary of your whole research in minimum words, so you can call it as abstract as well. Okay, then research paradigm means research approach, and research approach is nothing but the research method itself. Okay, next is which one among the following statement is true in the context of the testing of hypothesis. Okay, so among these options, which is the statement which is true in relevant or in regard towards the testing of hypothesis? So it is only the alternative hypothesis that can be tested. So whenever we test the hypothesis, then at that time we only test the alternative hypothesis. It is only the null hypothesis that can be tested. So whenever we test the hypothesis, then there is only the null hypothesis that we test. Both the alternative and the null hypothesis can be tested. Both the alternative and the null hypothesis cannot be tested. So basically students, this thing is really most important. Whenever you test the hypothesis, then in that section basically you only test the null hypothesis. Okay, because the meaning of null hypothesis is that we basically state that there is no relationship between the variables under study, and that's why we test only the null hypothesis. And whenever we get the results, and whenever we get the results like we should accept the null hypothesis, then in that situation we accept it. And whenever we reject the null hypothesis, then in that situation we automatically accept the alternative hypothesis. Okay, and that's why your correct answer should be 2, that is it is only the null hypothesis that can be tested. Okay, next is in using the hypothetical deductive research paradigm, which of the following sequences is considered appropriate? Okay, so whenever you are using hypothetical deductive research approach, then for that using the approach you need to go through simple steps. Okay, those are the research steps. So what are the sequences of these research steps? So first is hypothesis making, hypothesis testing, arriving at generalization and conclusion, establishing a research problem, hypothesis making, hypothesis testing, arriving at generalization and conclusion, hypothesis making, establishing a research problem, then hypothesis testing, then arriving at generalization and conclusion. Hypothesis testing, hypothesis making, finalizing the problem, arriving at generalization and conclusion. Okay, so your correct answer should be 2, because whenever you do any kind of a research, then your first step should be to establish a research problem. Okay, and that's why basically you need to identify first of all the research problem, then establish a research problem, then after that formulate a hypothesis, then test a hypothesis, then arrive at generalization, and last session will be of conclusion. Okay, so basically what the meaning of hypothetical deductive research paradigm? So basically in this research paradigm you can see these two words, and those are hypothetical and deductive. So hypothetical means basically you are going to formulate the hypothesis, and deductive means you are going to test the hypothesis. So this is the meaning of these two sentence words, okay. And that's why in this basic research paradigm, you need to first of all formulate the hypothesis, which is the mandatory thing, and the second thing is that deductive means basically you are going to test the hypothesis. That's why your correct answer should be 2, that is this one, okay. A college or university teacher plans to test his or her substantive research hypothesis in a major project. Which of the following statements are considered relevant in this regard? Okay, so college or university teacher, okay, is planning to test his or her substantive research hypothesis. Okay, so basically here he wants to test substantive research hypothesis, and research hypothesis means alternative hypothesis. So in this hypothesis we state that, or we predict that there is relationship between the variables. Okay, so with regard to this hypothesis testing part, okay, which of these following statements are correct? Substantive research hypothesis has to clearly specify the relationship among variables. Okay, so basically whenever we formulate the substantive research hypothesis, then that research hypothesis should clearly specify the relationship among the variables those are under study. And this statement is correct, because whenever we know the exactly relationship among the variables, then obviously our research hypothesis will be more clear, and it will help us to specifically test it. Okay, second is research hypothesis may be directed at finding out differential effects or relationships. Okay, research hypothesis may be directed at finding out differential effects or relationships. Okay, again this statement is correct, because research hypothesis should be directed at finding out differential effects or relationships, because this is basically the outcome of our research process, and that we want basically, and this is the goal of our whole research. Null hypothesis should be formulated beforehand. So here we are going to test the research hypothesis, and that's why beforehand we don't need to formulate a null hypothesis. So this statement is incorrect. There is direct support available for testing the substantive research hypothesis. No, basically this thing does not happen in the research process, because whenever there is direct support available for testing the substantive research hypothesis, then this thing comes under unethical research process, and that's why this statement is again incorrect. The final decision of the on the research hypothesis may be reached indirectly by deciding the fate of the null hypothesis. Yes, this statement is correct, because whenever you reject the null hypothesis, then obviously automatically you accept the research hypothesis. Okay, and whenever you accept the null hypothesis, then you reject the research hypothesis, and that's why indirectly your decision will be based upon the fate of the null hypothesis itself. That's why your correct answer should be 4, that is A, B and E only, because here only these statements are correct. Next is research problem is feasible only when. So in which situations research problem is feasible? So when it is researchable, when it is new and adds something to knowledge, or when it has utility and relevance, and all of these. So basically students, research problem is feasible only when it is researchable. Whenever it is researchable, then obviously it will be feasible. When it new and whenever it adds something to knowledge, then obviously it will be feasible. And as well, whenever it has utility and relevance, relevance means whenever it has relevance to the problems in the society, then obviously it will be feasible. And that's why in all of these situations research problem is feasible, and that's why your correct answer should be 4, that is all of these. Okay, from the list given below, identify those which are called non-probability sampling procedures. Okay, so here we have given a different sampling procedures, and we need to identify which are the non-probability sampling procedures among these procedures. So basically there are two types of sampling procedures, and those are probability and non-probability sampling procedures. And probability sampling procedures means there we basically randomly assign the participants and randomly select the participants. But in the non-probability sampling procedures, we do not randomly select the participants. So here we do not randomly select the participants. Okay, so let us see here different sampling procedures: simple random sampling, dimensional sampling, snowball sampling, cluster sampling, quota sampling, stratified sampling. So from these sampling procedures, dimensional sampling, snowball sampling and quota sampling are the non-probability sampling procedures. Okay, because within the dimensional sampling, this is the extension of quota sampling, and here a participant are get selected because they have the those particular characteristics, and here researcher think about many characteristics such as gender, then age, etc. And here basically researcher select the participants based upon the different characteristics, and each participant should have those defined characteristics, and those are called as dimensional sampling, because here the characteristics are many but the participant is one. Okay, and that's why this is the extension of quota sampling. In the snowball sampling, a researcher inspires the participants which are already under study, okay, to ask the other participants, okay, to get into the study. So basically here a researcher ask the participants under study to invite their colleagues or their familiar people to get participated in the study. So this is called as the snowball sampling. And within the quota sampling, basically a researcher wants the specific people who has specific characteristics, and that's why those of these three are the non-probability sampling procedures. But here simple random sampling, then cluster sampling and stratified sampling, these are the probability sampling procedures, and that's why your correct answer should be 4, that is 2, 3 and 5. Okay, next is research design that needs to collect factual information on a continuing basis is classified as. Okay, so from these options, which is the research design that needs to collect factual information on a continuing basis? So whether it is longitudinal study design or pre and post study design, cross-sectional study design or double control study design. So within this, the longitudinal study design is the study design that needs to collect factual information on a continuing basis, and that's why it should be your correct answer. Because in the longitudinal study design, okay, basically participants are to be called for a particular time interval, and that time interval is for a longer period of time or shorter period of time. It depends upon the study criteria, and on a interval basis, participants give the real information at that period of time to the researcher on a continuing basis. Okay, and that's why the correct answer to this question is longitudinal study design. In the pre and post study design, so basically over here before and after treatments, the measurements are to be taken. Okay, and that's why it is called as the pre and post study design. Cross-sectional study design is the study design in which a researcher takes the information from lots of participants at a one period of time. Okay, and in the double control study design, here there are two control groups and one experimental groups. Okay, and that's why it is called as the double control study design, and the correct answer is 1, that is longitudinal study design. A researcher intends to find out the differences in the motivational outcome or outlook of first degree level students in terms of their belongingness to rural or urban areas and the educational status of parents. what will be the dependent variable in this study. Okay, so here researcher intends to find out the differences in the motivational outlook of first degree level students based on their belongingness to either rural or urban areas, and based on the educational status of their parents. So here basically a researcher wants to study the motivational outlook of first degree level students, and that's why here motivational outlook should be the dependent variable, because the variable which is under study, or the effect variable over here, is motivational outlook, and the independent variables are belongingness to rural or urban areas and educational status of their parents. Okay, and that's why here your correct answer should be 4, that is motivational outcome or motivational outlook, because dependent variable is the effect variable and it is basically depend upon the independent variables. So whenever we change the values of the independent variables, then automatically the values of the dependent variable will be changed. Okay, that's why your correct answer should be 4, that is motivational outlook. Next is the objective of exploring the existing literature should be to identify which of the following issues. Okay, so what is the objective of literature basically? Why we do the review of literature? So what is already known about this area, then what concepts and theories are relevant to this area, how to get funding for the research, what are the significant controversies in this area, then are there any inconsistencies in the findings of this area. So basically to reviewing the existing literature means we find out the theory, or we find out the articles which are there published by other authors or other researchers before me or before us. Okay, and these literatures help us to understand the study, okay, whatever we are studying right now. And that's why we should know what is already known about this area, and that's why we review the existing literature as well. What concepts and theories are relevant to this area, we need to know that. So again this is again the objective of this. Then what are the significant controversies in this area, we should know that. So for that again we do the review of existing literature, and again we need to know whether there are any inconsistencies, means whether there are any gaps in the findings of this area or not, and that's why we do the review of existing literature. And that's why your correct answer over here should be 3, that is A, B, D and E only. Okay, next is which of the following sampling techniques in research imply randomization and equal probability of drawing the units. So here they have asked you from these sampling techniques, which is the sampling technique which has equal probability of getting selected to the all the participants. So basically all the participants have the equal probability to get selected in the study. So basically here we use the randomization formula to select the different participants to the study. So whether it is quota sampling, whether it is snowball sampling, whether it is stratified sampling, or whether it is dimensional sampling or cluster sampling. So here the probability sampling procedures are stratified and cluster sampling. As we have seen in this video only, ki quota, snowball and sampling, all of these are the non-probability sampling. Okay, and that's why the remaining options will be stratified and cluster sampling, and those are the probability sampling techniques. And that's why your correct answer should be C and E only. Okay, C and E only, stratified and cluster sampling, which includes data concerning the family background and educational development. So from these options, which is the research method or which is the data collection method, which includes data which is relevant to the family background and educational development. So we have here different options: case study, general behavior, genetic approach and adequacy. So students, if you have seen all of these options, then you will understand that here only case study is the research method or it is the data collection method, and general behavior, genetic approach and adequacy, all of these are not any kind of a data collection method in research. Okay, so all of these options gets eliminated, and that's why your correct answer is case study. Okay, here it is very easy to understand the answer to this question because of the options are really very easy. But there is concept behind this, and this is that case study is a qualitative research method, and basically it involves in-depth study of single case from various angles. Okay, and data sources includes data regarding family and educational background mostly, and primary data collection methods are observation and conducting interviews over here. Okay, so this is nothing but the case study and the information about it, and that's why case study includes data which is relevant to the family background and educational development. Okay, which one of the following is a type of self-reporting technique? So from these options, which is the type of self-reporting technique? And we have the options: field analysis, questionnaire, case study, focus groups. So let us see first of all what is self-reporting technique. So basically students, self-reporting techniques of data collection uses surveys, questionnaires or polls where respondents read question and select a response by themselves without any interference from investigator. So basically self-reporting technique of data collection uses surveys, questionnaires and polls as the method of data collection, and that's why your correct answer over here should be questionnaire, because questionnaire is a type of self-reporting technique. Okay, and all of the other options like field analysis, case study and focus groups are the data collection methods, but they are not type of self-reporting technique, because within the field analysis basically researcher wants to understand the human behavior in their natural environment. Okay, in the case study, as we have seen earlier in this video, we are going to study in-depth information of a single person only, and within the focus groups there is a homogeneous groups and which has the participants which has the common characteristics. Okay, and that's why here your correct answer should be 2. Next is the techniques by which we can study an individual's personality by observing his or her style of life, behavior, manner, thoughts and feelings is called. So from these options, which is the technique by which we can study individual's personality by observing his or her style of life, by observing his or her style of behavior or his or her style of manner, thoughts and feelings. Okay, so whether the technique is inventory or case history or rating scale or projective. Okay, so the correct answer to this question is 2, because the correct answer is case history. So case history includes all relevant information or material, okay, which is gathered about individual, family, group, etc. And the common type of information included in case history are like basic statistical data such as gender, sex, name, like that. Okay, so basic data it includes, as well it includes clients history of services, as well it includes investigation which is pertaining to client's case. It includes investigation outcomes. It includes past and present treatments and or counseling sessions, then history of illnesses, complaints and their resolution, referrals, etc. Okay, and that's why here your correct answer should be 2, which is case history. And the other options such as inventory, rating scale, projective, okay, these are as well the techniques, but these are the techniques by which we can't study individual's personality by observation. Okay, and that's why the correct answer is 2, that is case history. Okay, next is name the method by which which deals with only one person at a time and promotes his adjustment. So from these methods, which is the method which deals with only one person at a single time, and also this method promotes his adjustment. So whether it is case study, whether it is questionnaire or clinical method or experimental method. So obviously students, now all of you understood that your correct answer over here should be case study. As we have seen earlier in this video, within the case study we are going to study in detail information about a single person at a time. Okay, and that's why case study is the method which deals with only one person at a time, and also case study promotes that person's adjustment. I mean to say, according to that person's adjustment, researcher basically do the study. Okay, as we know that what is questionnaire. So basically questionnaire is a self-reporting technique in which researcher asks the questions to the respondents and respondents themselves gives the answers to the researcher. Okay, within the clinical method, so basically this is the method which is used in clinical areas such as within the laboratory or within the diagnostic labs. Okay, and in the clinical method, maybe a researcher can do a study on a single person, and as well maybe a researcher can do a study on a group of people, okay, which has the common characteristics. Fine. And within the experimental method, researcher can study the relationship between the variables, as well researcher controls the variables in the experimental method, and here researcher statistically tests the hypothesis. Okay, so lots of things can be done within the experimental method, but your correct answer over here is case study. Okay, a researcher wants to study the association between gender and using a mobile phone. Data collected for this study will be. So here researcher wants to study exactly what is the association or relationship between the gender and using a mobile phone. I mean to say, how much amount of gender, okay, using a specific mobile phone. For example, how many there are the number of female candidates who are using a mobile phone, and how many there are number of male candidates who are using a mobile phone, and researcher here wants to study that association. Okay, so here for that purpose, what kind of data researcher will collect? So whether researcher will collect quantitative data or qualitative data, continuous data or classified data. So mainly students, there are two types of data within the research, and those are quantitative and qualitative data. So quantitative data, as the name suggests, it represents the numerical data basically, because here we give the particular values to the data sets, and we can measure here the data, okay, through those values. But within the qualitative data, we don't give the values to the data sets, and as well here the data is in the picture or word format. Okay, and over here researcher will collect the qualitative data, because here researcher wants to understand exactly the association between gender and using a mobile phone, right? And that's why here he will collect the qualitative data, which includes lots of experiences, behaviors of each gender towards the mobile phone. Okay, so only quantitative data over here is not sufficient to study whole thing, and that's why here researcher will collect the qualitative data mainly. Okay, and that's why your correct answer should be 2. Arrange the following stages of processing of data in a correct sequence. So over here we have given some stages of processing of data, and we have to arrange these stages in a correct sequence. So let us see what are these stages: coding, editing, tabulation, classification, using percentages. So basically students, whenever we collect the data, so after that we need to process that data for our further processes in our research. Okay, so in that case your first stage of processing of data will be editing. Okay, editing. So within the editing part, basically we remove the unambiguous data or the data which is unclear, and as well whenever there is a wrong information within the data, so we remove it. Okay, this is called as the editing part of the data. Then second is coding. So within the coding part we give a particular kind of a symbol to the data so that we can identify the data. Third one is classification. So after that we classify the data according to whether it has numerical value or not, or whether the data is in picture or word format, according to, okay, that. Then next is we tabularize the data. Basically whenever we have a data set, then we categorize the data in the tabular format so that it will be easier for all of us to understand the data, and as well we can easily mention the data in the tables easily. Okay, and the last one is using percentages. So whatever data we have tabularized, so basically we represent that data using the percentages. So by showing the data by using the percentages will be easier for the readers to understand exactly what amount of data is available. Okay, and that's why your correct answer should be 4, which is BADCE, because over here B editing will be your first stage, coding will be your second stage, classification will be your third, tabulation fourth, and using percentages will be fifth stage. Okay, which one of the following stages of the marketing research process is most expensive? So over here we have mentioned that different stages of the marketing research process, and from these stages which is the most expensive stage, whether it is data analysis, whether it is data collection, or whether it is developing the research plan or report writing. So all of we know that what is exactly the marketing research process. As the name suggests, it is a marketing research process. So in this research process basically we study the trends in the market. Okay, whatever there is trending in the market, and we study on that. And that's why over here the most expensive stage in the marketing research is data collection, because over here we need lots of data from the lots of amount of people, because here we are going to study regarding marketing trends. Okay, and that's why to collect the data we need a lot of funding. Okay, and as well here data collection requires lots of time as well. Okay, and that's a data collection process over here is most expensive. Okay, which data is cheaper to collect? Now which data is cheaper to collect, whether it is primary data, secondary data, new data, or collected data? Now within the research methodology, again there are two types of data, and those are primary and secondary data. So primary data is the data which is created and used by the first user. Okay, and this is the primary data because here first user collects or creates the data at the place where it is originally creates. All of you getting? And secondary data is the data which is created by the third persons or second user, basically second user or third person. So for example, secondary data is the data which is available on the internet, which is available through the texts. Okay, so this is called as the secondary data. But primary data is the data that first user collects through the interviews, questionnaires. All of you getting? And that's why here secondary data is cheaper to collect than the primary data, because within the primary data collection method researcher has to take some kind of an activity such as interviews, such as surveys or questionnaires. But within the secondary data a person need to only collect the data from the internet, from the persons, like that. Okay, so here secondary data collection method does not require any kind of that much amount of funding, but primary data collection method requires lots of funding. Okay, and that's why your correct answer should be 2. Next is, a researcher is interested in studying the prospects of a particular political party in an urban area. So what tool should he prefer for the study? So now over here, researcher is interested to study the prospects, okay, of a specific political party in an urban area. So for that he needs to collect the data. Okay, so for the data collection, what kind of data collection tool he will use? So whether he will use rating scale or interview or questionnaire or schedule. So students, now here researcher wants to study the prospects of a political party in an urban area. So here there is an urban area, and as well there is nothing like work which is done by a political party. Okay, and by taking consideration all of these things, we can understand that urban area is the area which includes a lot of population, and as well there is lot of population, so researcher can't takes interview, right? So interview option gets eliminated because it will take lots of time for the researcher. Okay, and urban area includes the people who are majorly literate, they are literate, right? And that's why they can answer to the questions whatever researcher asked to them through the online media such as internet, email, like that. Okay, and that's why over here researcher will follow the questionnaire tool. Okay, because it will be easier to researcher, okay, to collect the data through the questionnaire tool. Okay, and here researcher can't use rating scale because rating scale can be operated when there is some kind of work which is already done by a political party. But over here they have not mentioned us that a work has been done by a political party in an urban area, and that's why over here researcher can't use rating scale, but he can use questionnaire. And schedule can't be used because schedule is the technique in which researcher itself fill up the questionnaire. Okay, but over here researcher wants the opinions of the people from an urban area, right? And that's why he wants specific the responses from the people, and that's why to get the responses from the people itself he will use questionnaire, not schedule. Okay, next is, which of the following is not the method of research? Now from these options, which is not the method of research, whether it is survey, historical, observation, philosophical. Now students, we need to understand exactly what is the method of research. So research method basically comprises of strategies, okay, strategies, then processes or techniques, that are being utilized to collect data or evidence so as to reveal new information or create better understanding of topic. Okay, and that's why whenever we see this concept of method of research, then you will understand that survey is the method of research, historical is again the method of research, observation is again the method of research, but philosophical is not the method of research. And that's why your correct answer should be 4, because within the survey we can ask the questions to the respondents and respondents give us the answers. Within the historical method of research, basically we can collect the data from the past. Basically we can collect the data through the people in the past, we can collect the data through the pictures or videos which are recorded. And as well, observation is the mostly used data collection method in the research, okay, in different kinds of research types, right? And within the observation, researcher can use somehow strategies or techniques such as participant observation is some of the strategy, non-participant observation is another strategy. Okay, and that's why all of these are the methods of research, but philosophical is not the method of. The question 1 is, suppose a researcher tests the null hypothesis through two-tailed test and another researcher tests directional hypothesis through one-tailed test, the difference is in. So basically in this question they have asked us that exactly what is the difference between two-tailed test and one-tailed test in regard to the testing part of null hypothesis and directional hypothesis respectively. So basically students, in one-tailed test there is only one end for alternative hypothesis, okay, and that's why it is called as the directional hypothesis, okay. But for two-tailed test it has two ends, okay, both the ends, and those are left and right ends, okay, and that's why there are lots of differences in the testing part of two-tailed test and one-tailed test, and those are differences in statistical formula, because these are the two different tests, and that's why we need to use different statistical formula. Again, the level of significance is different, and as well the table value that we use for testing significance is different. So basically all of we know that what is the table value. So basically there is a table which is called as the T distribution table, okay, and that table is for both two-tailed test and one-tailed test, and the values are different for two-tailed test and one-tailed test in the table, and we need to use those values for testing the significance level, all of you getting, and that's why the difference is in all of these aspects, and those are statistical formula, level of significance, table value used for testing significance, okay. That's why your correct answer should be 4. Next, a null hypothesis is. Now what is the definition of null hypothesis? Whether it is an intelligent hunch about probable result, or it is a type of research hypothesis, or it is a statistical hypothesis to be tested, or it is a research hypothesis formulated for a statistical inference. So basically students, a null hypothesis is a statement in that we predict that there is no relationship between the variables under study, and in the research methodology we only test the null hypothesis, okay. This is the only hypothesis that we test in the research process, and that's why your correct answer should be 3. That is, it is a statistical hypothesis to be tested, because there are lots of research hypotheses including directional hypothesis, alternative hypothesis, which is also called as a research hypothesis, statistical hypothesis over there, simple hypothesis, composite hypothesis is there, but there is only one hypothesis which is the null hypothesis, and that is only tested in the whole research process, not other any kind of hypothesis, okay, and that's why your correct answer should be 3. When we reject the null hypothesis, we are suggesting that the treatment is dash the dependent variable. So whenever we reject the null hypothesis in the research, then after that what will happen to the dependent variable and independent variable? So whether the treatment is not related with the dependent variable, or whether the treatment is likely to affect the dependent variable, or whether the treatment is not likely to affect the dependent variable, or none of these. So basically students, there are two basic types of hypothesis in whole research process, and those are null hypothesis, okay, that I have given the definition for this earlier in this video, and the another one is alternative hypothesis, okay, which is also called as the research hypothesis. Because in the alternative hypothesis we predict that there is the relationship between the two variables, but in the null hypothesis we predict that there is no relationship between the two variables under study, and that's why whenever we reject the null hypothesis, then automatically we accept the alternative hypothesis, okay, and that's why here ultimately we accept that there is the relationship between the two variables. So it means that the treatment is going to likely affect the dependent variable. It means that whenever we study the variables in the research process, so basically there are two common types of variables, and those are independent variables and dependent variables, okay. and whenever there is a relationship between these variables, then obviously independent variable is the cause variable, so it causes some effects in the dependent variable. So whenever we alter the values of independent variables, then obviously it will affect the values of the dependent variable. So it's like that, and that's why whenever we reject the null hypothesis, then obviously we are going to accept the alternative hypothesis, and that's why it suggests that the treatment is affecting the dependent variable, and that's why your correct answer should be 2, that is likely to affect the dependent variable. Which of the following outcomes is reflected when we fail to reject a false null hypothesis? So whenever we fail to reject a false null hypothesis, then what will happen? So whether there will be type 2 error or there will be type 1 error, or when there is both types of errors, and those are type 1 and type 2 error, or none of these. So students, basically there are two types of errors in the whole null hypothesis testing part, and those are type 1 error and type 2 error. Okay, so within the type 1 error, when it will happen or what is the outcome? So basically whenever there is null hypothesis, okay, and you are going to reject the null hypothesis, though it is true, okay, this null hypothesis is true, but still I am going to reject it. So in that case type 1 error will happen. And in what situation type 2 error happens? So whenever there is a null hypothesis, okay, and this null hypothesis is false, but I am not going to reject it, so I am going to accept it. Okay, so in this situation basically type 2 error happens, and that's why the above situation in the question is basically the type 2 error. Okay, because here the null hypothesis is false, but we are failing to reject it. It means that the null hypothesis is false, but we are accepting it. Okay, and that's why in this situation your outcome will be type 2 error. Okay, and I want to tell you one thing, that students, in the research methodology part, okay, either type 2 error will happen or type 1 error will happen. Okay, both the types of error and those are type 1 and type 2 error will not happen simultaneously in one research process. So understand this thing, students. Okay, and that's why your correct answer should be either type 2 error or type 1 error. So you need to eliminate this option as a whole. Okay, whenever such kinds of question will asked in your entrance exam. Okay, and that's why in this situation type 2 error is occurring. Which of the following is correct while conducting a test of significance? So whenever I am doing a test of significance, then okay, which of these following options are correct? So alpha is the probability of finding a significant correlation or difference erroneously by chance alone. Alpha should be set by the experimenter before the experiment. Alpha values are often set to 0.05 or 0.01, but there is nothing sacred about these numbers, all of these. So basically students, test of significance means what? So basically test of significance is nothing but you are testing your null hypothesis by using the statistical methods in the whole research process. Okay, and that's why what is exactly this alpha? So alpha is what? As we have seen earlier in this video, that type 1 error occurs whenever we are testing the null hypothesis. So the probability of occurring type 1 error, okay, is called as alpha, and that's why ultimately alpha is the probability of finding a significant correlation or difference erroneously. All of you getting? Because this is the probability of occurring a type 1 error, and that's why ultimately this is the probability of finding a significant correlation between the variables or difference between the variables, but by chance alone. All of you getting? And as well, there is some common values for alpha, and experimenter or researcher should set these values before the experiment, because they will understand exactly what will happen or what will be the results of their research. Okay, and alpha values are often set to 0.05 or 0.01, but there is nothing sacred about these numbers. Again, this statement is correct because the smaller the values of alpha, the greater is the test of significance value. So I mean to say that your test results will be more significant when the alpha values will be more smaller. All of you getting? And that's why all of these options are correct in regard to the test of significance part. Okay, now next is type 1 error occurs if. Now this is the easiest question. Okay, so whenever students, you will understand exactly what is the type 1 error and type 2 error, then you won't fail to answer these questions correctly in your exam. All of you getting? So let us see different options. The null hypothesis is rejected even though it is true. The null hypothesis is accepted even though it is false. Both the null hypothesis as well as alternative hypothesis are rejected. None of the above. So your correct answer should be obviously 1. As I have told you earlier in this video that whenever the null hypothesis is true but still we reject it, then in that situation type 1 error occurs. Okay, all of you getting? And that's why your correct answer should be 1. Okay. A statement of prediction. Now here focus on the word prediction, that sets forth the basis for testing the relationship between variables in an attempt to link theory to reality is called. So from these options, which is the statement of prediction, and this statement of prediction gives us a basic idea, okay, for testing the relationship between the variables. And as well, this is the statement of prediction, okay, and we are going to test this statement of prediction because we need to understand, okay, the relationship of the theory to reality. We are going to link the theory to reality. Okay, so this kind of statement of prediction is called as what? Whether it is random sampling, whether it is questionnaire, whether it is hypothesis, whether it is assumption. So all of you now understood that, students. Now the correct answer is hypothesis, because hypothesis is the statement of prediction. That's why I have told you that focus on this word, prediction. So whenever you see prediction in the research methodology section, then it is nothing but the hypothesis. And one more thing is that hypothesis gives us the basic information, okay, about what? About the testing of relationship between the variables under study. And as well, this is the attempt to link theory part to the reality. All of you getting? And that's why your correct answer should be hypothesis, not assumption, because there is a lot of difference between hypothesis and assumption. Assumption is only the thing which comes after our intuitive thinking, but hypothesis is the proper prediction. It is a proper statement of prediction. This is not a intuitive thinking part. And as well, hypothesis includes the relationship between the variables, and as well, this is an attempt to link theory to reality, but assumption is not like this. All of you getting? And random sampling is the technique in the research process, okay, by using which we are going to select the samples from the target population. And questionnaire is the data collection method under which researcher asks the questions to the respondents and respondents give the answers to them. And that's why your correct answer should be 3. Okay. Hypothesis must have. So hypothesis must have which kind of feature or characteristic? So whether it is testability, whether it is applicability, whether it is durability or measurement. So hypothesis must have testability. This is the most important characteristic hypothesis must have, because whenever hypothesis does not have testability, then how we are going to test it? By using the statistical techniques. And that's why hypothesis must have testability. Okay, and that's why we can test it by using statistical techniques, and finally we get the results Okay, whether the results will be significant or non-significant, all of you getting. And that's why hypothesis must have testability. It should be clearly, notify exactly what is the relationship between the variables, and hypothesis, it should have clarity as well. That's why your correct answer should be 1. To test a null hypothesis, a researcher uses. So whenever I want to test a null hypothesis, then what type of statistical technique I should use. So whether it is t-test or ANOVA or X-square or factorial analysis. So in this situation, a researcher uses ANOVA. So let me tell you why. So t-test is the parametric test, as we have seen earlier in before videos, right? So this is the parametric test, and here there are two groups, group 1 and group 2, and we are going to find out the mean values of group 1 and group 2, and we are going to compare these values, okay, whether the values are different or equal. And by comparing these mean values, we will get the results of our research. All of you getting? And this is nothing but the t-test, and t-test is going to compare only two variables. Okay, by using the t-test we can only compare the two variables, okay, in a whole research process. ANOVA, what is this? So ANOVA is the extension of t-test. I mean to say, this is the test which is based upon t-test only, but this is the advanced t-test. Okay, and here we are going to analyze the variance basically. Okay, this is the analysis of variance, and within the ANOVA test we are going to compare the means of different groups, but here we can compare more than two variables at a time, and that's why ANOVA test is more favorable than t-test. Okay, and that's why researcher uses ANOVA to test null hypothesis, because sometimes in a research process there are more than two variables. So in that situation we need to use ANOVA, okay, than t-test. Okay, what is X-square? X-square is the chi-square test. Okay, and chi-square test is a non-parametric test, and chi-square test is done to understand the difference between the expected values and the values that we get through our results basically. Okay, and that's why to test a null hypothesis, researcher does not use chi-square test. Okay, researcher uses null hypothesis. And what is factorial analysis? So basically factorial analysis is the technique by which we reduces a large variable into smaller variable factor, and that's why it is called as a factorial analysis. So your correct answer for this question should be 2. Okay, next is, if the null hypothesis is false, then which of the following is accepted? This is the easiest question, students. Whenever we reject the null hypothesis because it is false, then what type of hypothesis we are going to accept? Whether it is null hypothesis, positive hypothesis, negative hypothesis, or alternative hypothesis. So obviously students, whenever we are going to reject the null hypothesis and it is false, then in that situation we are going to accept the alternative hypothesis, which is also called as the research hypothesis, right? That I have told you earlier in this video. Okay, that's why your correct answer should be 4, that is alternative hypothesis.